All right, welcome again, not to the shop, but to a special undisclosed location. As many of you know, we're on a road trip. We've actually traveled over 4,700 miles, and we will be back in the shop next Thursday night. They say when you return home, all your problems feel like opportunities. I get to do this, so I can't wait to get back there and get to work. I've got a number of projects and lots of ideas for the rest of the year. So I do want to respond to any questions you might have, and we'll go from there.
Well, I think one of the first questions is Dan's asking, what your inspiration has been like, or what you're experiencing on the trip. Are you feeling, what are you feeling? I'm not going to tell you what you're feeling.
Oh, great question, Dan. Hey, thanks for that question. Well, it's really been surprising how much it's affected me to see people's faces and to talk to people and to hear that what we're doing is meaningful to those of you in your lives in some form or fashion. Because as I've shared many times, well, to some friends, when I'm in the shop, it's just me looking at a camera and the camera lady, of course, but she's behind the camera. So it's an odd existence. I don't feel the reaction. I don't feel the interchange that's normal with conversation. Like right now, I'm envisioning I'm envisioning your faces. So it's weird. I know this, it's real because I read the chats and we do communicate by voice occasionally and by emails and all kind in the neighborhood and all kinds of ways. But there's no skin on. So to have people come up and say how much, what we're doing is meaningful, it just kind of closes a loop for me, and I know for the camera lady too.
Yeah.
And who doesn't want to know that what they're doing is meaningful to another person? So thank you all for the many emails that we get saying that, but also just to meet you, shake your hand, and tell
really.
you, I'm so glad to see you and to know that this makes a difference in your life. You definitely make a difference in ours. It's an amazing kind of give and take, like any kind of offering like this. So.
Yes. Tim's asking, has any of your interactions with the groups changed any of the direction of the projects for the future? And Joel also is asking, what are the projects for the future?
Oh, great questions. It's just made me more excited to get back and build. I've been doing a presentation, the all-day presentation on chairs. I've been showing some aspects of building a Queen Anne chair on this trip. Of course, I just introduced the round chair, but the basis for the presentation has been the Craftsman dining chair. So a lot of people have asked about arms for that, so that will be coming up. I will be showing how to make an armchair from a more straightforward chair to begin with, like that Craftsman dining chair. I do want to do a Queen Anne chair, but that's probably not coming up real soon. But I have that shaker rocking chair in my mind and an Esherick version of that. I've talked about making a base with a drawer for the game table, for the chessboard top that we've made in the veneering courses. So that won't be an overly involved project, but I want to get to that one. I also want to do the master class of the bow front end table. Some of you took that bow front end table, and as a bonus, I drew a little quadrant where I said, this is the master class version, and I changed the way the drawer front was to like, it's really more involved, but I think you'll really enjoy it. So I want to add that video. I know I want to do a bow front chest of drawers in the future, and I know I'm forgetting some others, but There's a lot, trust me.
So we got a lot of questions coming in, so let me start you here.
Okay.
Mike's asking, for a low shelf on the coffee table where the shelf corner is attached to the legs, would you use a type of mortise and tenon?
I haven't done that a lot. I remember putting a lower shelf on a table that actually had tapered legs. So I did put mortises in there. You know, the corners can be sunk in. I mean, at least you could do corners. You're going to want to just make a square shelf. You know, you don't want to make this bump out into the shelf. You could into the corners, but the thing about that is you got to have it all fitted, dry fitted, and of course the shelf has to be set in place when you glue up the table. But those corners would be let into the legs. I'll have to think about that some more. That's a great question, but that's very specific too.
Okay, so another mic. Is it possible to make a larger version of the contemporary round table? I upscaled it to fit a 33-inch top.
Of course you can do it. You just got to make sure you get enough spread, like the way the legs sweep outward. You know, they've got to be out far enough. And I'm trying to think of the general rule of that. It's somewhere around like 2/3 of the diameter, but I'm always, with only 3 legs, I'm always concerned about when someone gets up from the table, if they're going to press down right where they are, how stable is the table going to be? And you can imagine if you only have a 3-legged table, you're going to have, possibly they may be pushing down right where the legs are not, you know, there's one leg going the other way. And so you almost have a more tippy table because those other 2 legs do not come close enough to that person. So when they push down, but you do have the cantilevered weight of the table. So you could make it a 4-legged table. Like instead of having the hexagonal center, you could just do a square, you know, or a larger octagonal. You know, you could do a larger, just make it octagonal and do 4 legs and have them sweep out. And you're going to have to redesign the legs. The round pedestal table, I thought a lot about that. And that's why I even made the model to get the spread of this was just a cross-lapped base with 4 uprights. So you had this cross-lap base and how long to make those legs given the width of the top. But yes, of course, you can upscale that. You're gonna have to beef up the legs a little bit, you know, you're gonna beef up the center, you know, to make it appropriate for a larger table like that.
John's curious, and you did talk about this in your presentation on chairs, is why are a lot of woodworkers nudgy about making a chair?
I think, John, I think it's just that intimidation factor of the angles, maybe, that there's more compound angles and you have a lot of factors going into it because it's made to hold a person of all different sizes. So it has to be strong. You want it to be fairly light looking, and it has to be nice looking from all 3 dimensions, and you want it to be comfortable. And so, and you have all this angularity going on too. So I think there's just a lot of that, you know, like where to begin. I mean, I feel that, but once you make one, I think they're the most satisfying type of piece to make because it is the most personal piece given we sit in them. So.
Charlie's got a question. Please discuss creating quarter sawn boards from plain sawn. Why would we not use this technique on all projects to reduce issues from wood movement?
Well, if the plank is wide enough, and it's plain sawn, you know, you're going to be getting over to rift sawn, and like those large planks I just described, if you were here, Charlie, I have some ash planks from this huge, like 33-inch diameter ash tree that was in our yard. So it yielded a bunch of 24-inch wide, 2-inch thick planks. And because it's such a large tree, there's a lot of quarter sawn on it. Imagine those planks that are close to the pith or the center of the tree, and you're going out like that, those boards have very little lines like this, and then almost everything is quarter sawn the whole way out, like 10 inches out on each side practically. So when you have plain sawn, you're going to get into rift and then quarter, so you can use that, especially if you can get wider planks. But for a dining top, I mean, I like the look of the cathedral. I mean, it's an appearance thing, It doesn't move that much that you can't work with it, and that we can't allow for wood movement and all that. Recently I found a website that calculates the wood movement for the given species based upon where you live and what time of year would be optimal and how much it's going to move, whether it's plain sawn or quarter sawn, and gives you the actual amount of movement. You enter in the numbers, like how wide the plank is and what type of figure is in there. And it's pretty amazing how you'll find that it doesn't move as much as we, talk about. It does at times. You just don't want to get in a situation where you glue up something cross grain, because then you're going to have a crack, or in other cases, you're going to have things misalign. So that's where we get concerned about wood movement, making sure we allow for things to move a bit. But if you like the look and figure of the board with the flat sawn cathedral grain, it can be beautiful. So I'd say that's why we use both. Sometimes we want just a linear look, but that can be, that's appropriate for craftsman style, but it can be a little boring, sometimes. So it's up to you, how you want to use it, but I would say that's why.
Chris is asking how any you would suggest for a good beginner chair class, which is one of the things you're talking about on the trip, is the craftsman dining chair that we have. And Tom goes
right
into great detail about how that he designed that for a first-time chair builder.
Yeah, that's a really great mortise and tenon style chair, which a lot of the 18th century chairs were, the Queen Anne and Chippendale in particular. So that one has some straighter lines than the more advanced curvy linear one. So that's a great chair to start with. You'll get the good basic approach to chair making, and that's a big part of my presentation. But I get into that at the beginning of that course. We have the video series that goes with the full-size drawings.
Yeah,
we ran out of full-size drawings on
on
this
the trip early.
trip about halfway through. So lots of people did just what you're asking and saw that as a really great starting place, the Craftsman Dining Chair project.
David says, I just reflattened my workbench. What finish should I put on it?
We mentioned that quite a bit in the recent Workbench course. But it's up to you, David. I like a thin, like oil-based finish, because I want to still kind of feel the wood. I don't want it too slippery or glossy, but I want it to have that warmth and some protection. So I am going to put either Danish oil or Waterlux. I think, after talking about it, Danish oil will get water rings easier. It's not as tough against water. So I'm going to go with thinning Waterlux for mine. I'm going to cut it a little with mineral spirits. Waterlux has, as its primary solid resin, it's mostly tung oil. So that's very water resistant, but when you thin it down, it'll go on beautifully. A couple coats maybe, and that's it. So that I don't want it glossy. I want it to feel more like, how Danish finishes are. Danish modern furniture. Even some of that's too glossy, but some people like it glossy. I've seen really like finished benches that look like works of art, and they look like finished pieces of furniture. I want it to feel like, it's not slippery and it's softer appearance. Yeah.
Bill's curious if there's any species of wood you would not use for woodworking projects and why.
There are some, let's see. Some of them are just murderous on your tools and knives. So I remember there was a time someone went by Goose Bay, this couple, and somehow or other they fell in love with exotic woods, and they wanted like enough material for this little mudroom, just a seat, like a good seat, and it had to be glued up like with 3 planks. And so they said, oh, could you just plane these down and edge glue them up, so long? Oh, sure, I'll do that. Well, they came over and they brought in and they had bloodwood, which I had never worked with. And I think I found out why they call it bloodwood, because it costs you feel like you're spilling a lot of blood working with it. It is a pain. There's some woods that have so many minerals in them that they dull your knives almost instantaneously, and that's what bloodwood was like. I started joining it, and it was as if it killed the joiner knives like after one pass. It was brutal, and I just kept like honing them, trying to get it flat, and it was really tough. And then I edged them, and I ended up getting it glued up, but I needed to put a lot of like dominoes in there just to make sure it was solid. And then you work with woods sometimes that have a lot of oil in them. Can be challenging. But most woods, they are rated like workability. So workability is a big factor. Also appearance, like I'm not going to use as a primary wood, something that I just don't find appealing, like red oak. I don't like it as a primary wood. It's heavy, it's very porous, open grain. It's fine, but it's not something I would use. And there's other species like that. They're made more for interior. If it's a very unstable species, some species just twist. I remember red gum was a pain to work with down. I'm getting into the small ones.
That's why they're not heard of very much.
Yeah, and so anyway.
Outdoor tables, Stuart's curious things that might go with the Adirondacks. What species of wood do you recommend for outside? I know you've talked about cypress and a lot of...
Yeah, you're going to use a wood that's very, good against the elements. All woods, it's tough when you put things outside, but any of the cedars, they're softer, but they work well. Of course, we use cypress on the Adirondack chair. Black locust, I've never used that, but I've seen it. It's beautiful, and it's supposed to hold up really well outside. White oak does well. It's heavier, though. Mahogany, genuine mahogany. Teak. So you're getting into like expensive woods, redwood, so it's all that. You just want to find something that can work against the elements. If you lived in the South, the Southeast especially, cypress is the choice. If it's, you want it more dense, if you can get it, as Tony has shared with me. I've only had dense cypress at my disposal from places like Goose Bay. But it's not as common up here in the Northeast, and it's gotten more expensive. So try to find what's regionally, ask the people at the lumberyard, what are your, if they're knowledgeable in that area, they'll probably help you out. We will be back in the shop next Thursday night, so
yeah,
on fire. So you got to show up for that. On behalf of the Kimberly and myself, we look forward to seeing you next time right back here
Yes.
on Shop Night Live.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Appreciate you putting up with all